All right, guys. Well, welcome to Blind Dave Crypto. Y'all have been asking different questions and whatnot, and I would like to introduce yet again a special guest to go into many of these different aspects. Many different things are going on, and no one's talking about it. And this is very important. This is a video you're going to want to listen to if you're within the United States, the EU, or Switzerland. So without further ado, let's bring in Steak. How you doing, Steak?
Hey, Dave. Yeah, I'm all right. Thanks for having me. I'm good. How are you?
I've today was a challenge. So a lot going on with the rental property. I'll leave it at that.
Sure, I imagine. Well, thanks for having me up here. Yeah, there is a fair bit that I want to share, but also maybe not go in too many tangents and do that later. But there was some news today that kind of flew under the radar in regards to a transatlantic agreement for cybersecurity and IT between the US, European Union, and Switzerland. And it was in regards to privacy and the privacy of European citizens' data in the US and the privacy of Swiss citizens' data in the US. And the interesting fact of that is that they've been arguing about that back and forth for about a decade now on how to do that because the European Union has a different set of values and morals in regards to privacy that the US has. There's of course the whole Silicon Valley companies that store large amounts of personal data, and it's just difficult to know what the regulatory framework is if there is no clarity. So they argued back and forth over the years, and in 2016 they decided to basically have a privacy shield, is what it was called. And in 2017, the Swiss, who aren't really part of the European Union, they're only part of the trade bloc. They agreed in 2017, a year later, to basically agree on the same set of rules of the privacy shield, and that worked well for 3 extra years. And in 2020, the Commission in Europe, the European Commission, basically shut it down. And for the last 3 years, it's been very unclear how to comply with your privacy data. Well, this is of course important if you're in blockchain, because everyone knows know your customer. Everyone knows about, well, we call it GDPR basically in Europe, but you kind of want to protect your credentials from falling into the hands of Silicon Valley just willy-nilly. Your driver's license, your healthcare files, your birth certificate, maybe even your haptic feedback, your EEG waves, your heart rate monitor. All these things are already written into law, but not from a privacy perspective. And then today the news broke that they settled well, basically from the EU perspective, on a rule by decree, because the European Commission, which is the body that people vote for, didn't get to vote on this. This was just pushed through in October by Biden. And now in the EU as well, they kind of agreed on a new framework. And if you go to the website, we can show that perhaps later in a tweet, it actually shows Privacy Shield. So it's just been a refurbishment and a rehash of the same website from 2016 till now. They just forgot to edit out the old terms. And
Well,
what's
and
interesting,
also for any information shared here, I'm going to go ahead and cite fair use. So for what I'm about to share, it is watermarked, all of that. So, but I am citing fair use because this is important. And in a decentralized atmosphere, in a decentralized manner, I feel it's important for all of my friends within crypto
yeah,
to
good point.
to
And
to to
and this
listen.
comes from government sources, so it's
Correct.
themselves sharing this. So as long as it's public information by them, I think it's fair to say that it's public information for us to talk about. But it kind of flew under the radar. So I dug up an old movie, 17 minutes long, that I kind of want to go into, if that's okay. I DM'd it to you on Twitter, Dave, and it's Free People. It's the head commissioner of the European Commission, Thierry Breton, who is basically responsible for the yeah, that's the video, great. He's basically responsible for the whole Digital Act, Self-Sovereign Act from 2014 in the EU. So the whole digital infrastructure in the EU that's being created since 2014 embodies not just the software aspect, but the whole hardware aspect as well. There's a lady there that you see on the screen now called Eva Maydel. She is a young global leader from the WEF, and she's part of the European Commission that basically is involved in the CHIPS Act and the Artificial Intelligence Act in the EU. Also very knowledgeable and has been speaking on the MiCA regulation, which is the crypto regulation in the EU. And there's a third person, and I think it's interesting for our American friends listening to this stream later on. This is September last year, and this guy was a complete nobody. At least to me he was, and to most people that I spoke with in spaces that didn't really know him. He's your Senator Mark Warren. And you might know him now, but not at the time, from the TikTok Act. You know, the I think it's called the Restriction Act,
Right,
the 686.
right, when they tried to ban the use of TikTok in the United States because
Yeah,
of Chinese involvement.
that's the narrative, of course. But if you look
Correct.
into the act, it's basically like the Patriot Act on steroids. Because if the president decrees that you're a hazard to the American people, they basically have the right to completely violate every single sense of your privacy and get all your data if they choose to do so by rule of decree by the president. So, you know, it's a pretty important law. I don't really want to go into that act because it's another beast by itself. But this guy, Mark Warner, apparently is the representative for the U.S. globally on all means with a digital infrastructure. Now, in this video of 17 minutes long, he addresses the relationship and the partnership on that front with the EU. And at some point, he will go into ORAN and Open Radio Access Networks, ORAN Alliance. I kind of want to stop there and then pick it up from that, why that's vital and important. So I would love if you can share this video, Dave. So if it ever gets taken off, this is from the EU website, by the way, we at least have a copy. And I think it's important that people watch it and see it with what the EU and the US is actually doing, and working in a tandem. They're on the same page. So if you would be so kind, Dave.
And not only that, now we have a copy of a copy. So I hope y'all enjoy. And is there a specific time or just let it play?
No, just let it play. I think it's important for people to see what the US is doing with the EU and to show evidence of what I'm saying, that it's actually being supported by government officials in foreign affairs on the highest level. And then perhaps we can build on the ramifications of that. And then we can clearly distinguish what is conjecture and what isn't. So please press play. It's only 17 minutes.
All right. I hope y'all enjoy.
Commissioner Breton, to this CHIP fireside chat. Thank you for your time and thank you for joining us. You, I believe, very well know our guests, but nevertheless, Senator Warner is the chairman of the Select Committee on Intelligence and one of the lead sponsors of the US CHIPS Act. Congratulations once again, Senator, on the recent adoption of the Act. And Commissioner Breton is the Commissioner for the Internal Market and has been the champion of the EU CHIPS Act, as well as strengthening European strategic autonomy as a whole. It is a real honor for me to be able to host today's discussion and to speak to both of you on this issue. The CHIPS Act are some sort of, we could say, national and regional response to a global challenge after a period of serious supply stability that we have witnessed. And so both CHIPS Acts seek to address in the same time challenges and vulnerabilities, but as well as enhance the existing strengths within our own territories. Of course, we have seen that there are increasing calls for like-minded partners to work together and to strategically align in order for us to ensure security of supply in the democratic world. And this is also a reason why I wanted to bring the three of us together today. While naturally there are competing economies, for me would be very important that we explore how the EU, the US, and other partners can ensure the next generation of chips is market dominated by democracies and not autocracies. Simply put, I think, and to wrap up my introduction remarks, I think the question here is, can the CHIPS Act help democracies win the global tech race that we are witnessing right now and that will probably get more intense in the years to come? So let me start with a question to both of you, which is related to what is your thinking on both the
Oh, come on. I shut down both of my nodes, so there should be no late lag, but
welcome everyone that's
are you kidding?
online, and thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, I think
today.
you were 4 minutes
Warm
in.
welcome as well as being the champion of some sort of, we could say, national and regional response to a global challenge after a period of serious supply stability that we have witnessed. And so both
We can always edit this out, Dave, no worries.
In the same time challenges and vulnerabilities, but as well as enhance the existing strengths within our own territories. Of course, we have seen that there are increasing calls for like-minded partners to work together and to strategically align in order for us to ensure security of supply in the democratic world. And this is also a reason why I wanted to bring the three of us together today. While naturally there are competing economies, for me would be very important that we explore how the EU, the US, and other partners can ensure the next generation of chips is market dominated by democracies and not autocracies. Simply put, I think, and to wrap up my introduction remarks, I think the question here is, can the CHIPS Act help democracies win the global tech race that we are witnessing right now and that will probably get more intense in the years to come? So let me start with a question to both of you, which is related to what is your thinking on both the EU and the US CHIPS Acts? Is the aim sufficiently at addressing not only manufacturing and R&D challenges, but also the broader geopolitical and security issues that surround that sector and the overall semiconductor industry? Would that be the aim? Would there be other ideas when you started designing and thinking on how those acts should look like? So Senator, maybe over to you first for brief remarks on that question, and then we'll turn to Commissioner Breton.
Eva, thank you, and Commissioner, it's good to be with you. Appreciate this opportunity to see how we can forge bigger collaborations around technology development. Let me say my journey around the CHIPS Act started actually in another technology sphere. My background before I was a governor or a senator was in telecommunications.
No kidding.
And I saw in the development of 5G technology something that completely shocked me, where suddenly there was not a Western company taking the lead, but instead there was a Chinese company in Huawei not only taking the lead in 5G, but literally setting the rules, the standards, the protocols of this next generation wireless system. That revelation 2017, 2018, 2019, and I remember many times going to our European friends and saying, Huawei has a problem, but they'd say, okay, well, what is, there's Ericsson, Nokia, Samsung, but what are the other solutions? And one of the things in our CHIPS Act is not only semiconductors, but we do have a couple $2 billion to work with our European and other allies on next generation wireless, which is called ORAN, Open Radio Access Network. So I was already concerned about the West's and democracy's failure to compete in many ways with China. And when I say China, let me be clear, my beef is not with the Chinese people, it is with the Communist Party of China and Xi Jinping and their kind of autocratic leadership, and an autocratic leadership that is enhanced by technology. So when we came to chips, it was a fairly easy argument to make. Here was a mature industry in the United States. We had made close to 40% of all the chips 20 years ago in the world. Our numbers were going down to 12%. China's numbers were almost the exact reverse. We see in terms of leading edge chips, none were made in America, almost all purchased through Taiwan. So we tried to put together a bipartisan approach that would say, particularly coming on the heels of COVID, can we both increase R&D in chips, because since semiconductor chips are in every device that has an on and off switch, can we bring back part of the fabrication facilities? Can we look as well at the tools that make the chips? Another important part where I think, again, democracies still have a lead, but it was an easy case to make, or easier than many, that without national government intervention, the level of subsidies that were being provided by other nation states, China and many of our friends in Asia, that if we didn't put some subsidies in place, there would never have been another chip fabrication plant ever built in America. So
subsidies.
That was the ability, starting with 5G, seeing the challenge with China, taking this industry
the CHIPS Act subsidizes
dominated, trying to bring it back to some level of more control over our supply chain was the genesis of the legislation. Although we'll come back, I hope we get a chance to talk about, even with that many things in line, it still took us 2 years to get from an idea to actually having the bill signed by the president.
Thank you very much. You touched on a number of very important topics, including China, but we'll come back to that one in a little bit. I'll give the chance now to Commissioner Breton to answer that question.
Breton.
Well, it's very good to be back to you, and good to see you again, Senator, even if it's through video. But it's very good. I'm here in Berlin, and I'm very happy, Eva, to be able to participate to this chat. Yes, in fact, we had exactly the same story on this side of the Atlantic Ocean. 20 years ago, we were also manufacturing 40% of the global production, and now we are like our US friends around 10%. So that's really the same story. And yes, we realized that we probably needed to make sure that in order to let's say, to be able to provide what is needed for all our industry, not only telecom. By the way, Senator, I'm coming also from the telecom business, and I'm also an engineer myself, as you know. And I was also in the supercomputers, so I know also how important is FinFET technologies and below 2 nanometers semiconductors. And I know that this is something which makes a difference. But I know also, like you, that through 5G, beyond 5G, Open one and everything. On one hand, we will have semiconductors everywhere, in every single industry. And here in Europe, we are engaged in a very strong transformation, of course, the Green Deal, which needs, by the way, a lot of semiconductors and intelligence. And, of course, also the digital transformation and digital decade. And for both of it, all our industries will need more and more semiconductors. And we see, of course, that in this need, we expect the global market to double in the next 8 to 10 years. So, of course, now, most of the facilities and manufacturing are in Asia. We know that. And of course, Taiwan is a big issue because it's probably more than 50% of the global production. So we are dependent. But of course, the good thing is that at least here in Europe, we have been able to maintain a very, very strong R&D activity. And we are, by the way, we believe, I think this is they like to say this in Europe, so I'm speaking for the semiconductor ecosystem. They believe that they are probably one of the best, of course, together with our US friends, but they believe they are one of the best, if not the best, in R&D. You know, IMEC centers, you know, Lakey, you know, Fraunhofer, and we continue to we invested a lot, of course. And by the way, we welcome every year all our friends from all US companies coming here, not too far from Brussels, by the way, to learn how to use FinFET technologies, how to use ASML machines, and everything. That's very important. But we need to continue. We need to continue to enhance this. And there is one thing which that we learned, by the way, during the pandemic, which is now, I think, what I call the new geopolitics of supply chain. We need to make sure that whatever happens, we will be able to secure the supply chains in all our critical parts. And
secure the supply chains,
and of
rare
course,
metals.
We speak of raw material, we spoke of the vaccines, but it's true more than ever for semiconductors. And that's the second part. So we need, of course, to make sure, of course, we don't do everything on our own, but we will need to make sure that we will be able to provide whatever the security of supply to make sure that we will not have to tackle a disruption of supply. For example, speak about China.
But Commissioner, on this point, very interesting, because you say we would ensure everything that we can to secure the supply chains. But to a certain extent, of course, when we speak about that, also part of it is through technological innovation to make sure that those democratic nations are the one ensuring technological innovation. And I wanted to ask you, in securing the supply chains, is there sufficient collaboration between the EU and the US? I think it's an important moment to also answer that question. And can we do more? Should we do more? What's your opinion on that point?
V-chain and Walton chain.
Of course, is that we want, of course, to welcome, like our US friends, more manufacturing plants on European soil. That's extremely important. And this is where we put also in the EU Chip Act a significant part of money just to make sure that we'll be able, let's say, to secure this and to offer to the one who would like to go and settle themselves in Europe, as long as, for us, which is extremely important, the plant could manufacture breakthrough technology or leading-edge technology. We are not here to do the job of the companies, but for breakthrough technologies, yes, we could put, let's say, the tax money payers because it's a new market. So, in a nutshell, Eva, we believe that it's extremely important, of course, to do this in strong coordination and cooperation, which is what we do, by the way, with Gina, Raimondo, and myself.
Extremely important to have this coordination.
From both sides of the ocean, we want to have the full chain available. In other words, we don't want to have any segmentation. Let's say, for example, that we will do all the advanced technologies here in Europe, and in the US, they will do the mature technology. It doesn't work this way, or vice versa. We need, of course, for industry to have the full chain, not, of course, to be able to do everything we need. Our objective is, at the end of the decade, to move from 10% today of production to 20%. It means that we need to open a lot of new manufacturing plants because the market is doubling. But of course, for us, what is extremely important is to have all the chain from mature technology to below 2 nanometers or 1 nanometer technology, and that's extremely important. But of course, then we need to see how we could monitor the market together, have some surveillance tool, work together. If there is
surveillance tool together.
At the end of the day, by the end of the decade, both the US CHIP Act and EU CHIP Act should make us, US and EU, at globally 40% of production, which will be something I think important, and we could then probably help each other if it's needed.
Thank you.
Together have 40% and then help each other if it's needed.
Message
Of course it's needed.
With us, and where the aim should be of our stake in the world production of chips. But speaking of supply chains, another country that is absolutely key in securing this supply chains is Taiwan. Warner, I want to turn to you. Speaker Pelosi recently visited Taiwan, and I was wondering, has the balance of risk with Taiwan changed, and what preventive actions can we take to ensure we both deter Chinese action against Taiwan, while ensuring our supplies if a conflict were to occur. But before we turn to you, I think the technical team of Commissioner Breton should mute him in order to see on the screen Senator Warner. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Let me. I want to address Taiwan, but let me first respond to the commissioner's comments. I agree with the commissioner. The goal we need to look at between the EU and the United States. I think a 40% manufacturing goal should be the minimum over the next 10 years. I actually think we could go larger. 3 quick points I want to make before I get to Taiwan. First, the fact that our European friends have moved so aggressively, so quickly, actually helped me convince my fellow senators to get this done. I used the argument of how quickly the Germans had moved with an 8 billion euro investment for Intel, and what the French government had done with Global Foundries. And I harassed my senators to say, like, if the Europeans are beating us on this, even though they're friends and allies, we need to make sure we invest.
$8 billion to Intel.
That activity from Europe spurred
the CHIPS Act in
our
the US
sometimes
is
slow
putting
political
$50 billion
system
to Intel too.
in the States to move to accomplish the goal. Second, one area that I think is terribly important as we talk about the whole supply chain are the tool manufacturers, the ASMLs, the AMLs, the LAMs, the Tokyo Semiconductors, because as long as we can make the most cutting edge tools and prevent some of those tools from falling into the hands, particularly of China, I think that is a choke point that the democracies alliance needs to maintain. Third, one of the things I'm very concerned about, because in the United States, at least over the last 30 or 40 years, there's been a reluctance to do something like this because it's 21st century industrial policy. One of the things I think we have to be very careful about, and I hope we can work with our EU friends on this, is making sure that we execute these programs correctly, that it doesn't become a race to the bottom of who can offer the most money for the least return for these companies to play us off against each other. We're both competitors and collaborators in this field, but getting this right is important because I personally believe that we're going to have to make similar investments in artificial intelligence and quantum computing, in potentially synthetic biology, other areas where
synthetic biology,
democracies
no one's
around the
talking
world
about that yet.
both secure the supply chain and maintain technology leadership. Now to the question of Taiwan, I'm not going to
pause it before Taiwan.
Yeah.
Just briefly, if you don't want to race to the bottom and you want to work together across the pond on all these industries, like both of them are saying, because they're spokespersons for the EU and the US, respectively, And after this, he created the Restriction Act. So I would argue that he has a fair bit of power in the US for the whole intelligence and telecommunications. If you want to work together between the EU and the US, you're going to need a legal binding trade agreement.
Correct.
We're going to go into that later, but I just wanted to say that before he heads into Taiwan, because that's much more on the semiconductors that are being constructed in Taiwan. Just before you press play, there are 3 types of semiconductors right now. Just call them 1, 2, and 3. So 3 is the most advanced and the most innovative. It's only being created in Taiwan right now, and the best one is being created in the Netherlands in ASML, which is in Eindhoven, Brainport. 1 and 2 is being created in Japan, in the US, but also in China. So China doesn't have the innovation or the technology to understand what we're doing in the Netherlands and Taiwan. So in the last few months, this was September, this was 10 months ago, this video. In the last few months, China has asked the Netherlands, ASML, to share their secrets in regards to semiconductors with China, and the US didn't want that. And eventually, it didn't go through. So I just wanted to add that tidbit before you press play on Taiwan again. So thank you for pausing, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
A comment specifically on the speaker's visit and the timing of it. As chairman of the Intelligence Committee, it obviously raised the stakes about the importance of Taiwan. It's been very clear to me for some time that President Xi, not unlike President Putin's obsession about Ukraine, President Xi has a similar type obsession about Taiwan, and clearly Taiwan's biggest asset is its extraordinarily successful semiconductor industry. One of the reasons why we have spent a lot of time with TSMC, but there are a host of other Taiwanese semiconductor companies that I believe, just in an effort to lessen their risk profile, will look to Europe, will look to America, will look to other places in East Asia to potentially build new plants. Because in a world as we see the decoupling take place between Europe and US and our allies like Japan and Korea against Russia, we have to bear in mind, I believe we have to believe President Xi at his word that at some point, particularly once he is reconfirmed as, in a sense, president for life shortly, that the goal of the CCP is to take action against Taiwan. And if they took action in the short run, the economic catastrophe, even if it was simply an economic blockade, if all of the chips that are built in Taiwan were suddenly cut off to the rest of the global market, it would be an economic catastrophe.
Wow.
Thank you very much. Just a brief comment on your comments on Commissioner Breton and how the US decided to act on the CHIPS Act. I'm glad to hear there's a Brussels effect, or so-called, Brussels effect, not just when it comes to very concrete regulation that very often tries to put new rules on the table, but also when we try to think strategically, because I think the EU CHIPS Act is exactly looking in that direction, and when countries try to be more strategic in the area. So that's good news for us, I believe, and especially for Commissioner Breton, who's being the main sponsor of the CHIPS Act. I will a little bit more dwell on the topic of China, because when we talk about our common collaboration between the EU and the US, of course, we think about the collaboration that's happening in the TTC, but China is a hugely important issue. I know it's not very much necessarily tackled and at the center or even in the periphery of discussions within the CCC, but just a few thoughts. I'm sure that our extensive audience that we have gathered online today is very much aware of a lot of the news that we've been hearing. A Chinese company wanting to buy a wafer factory in the UK, about the US approaching the Dutch government regarding the sale of ASML, equipment to China. We have heard that US officials have told NVIDIA and AMD that they will need special licenses to sell technology in the development of AI.
All these companies
China,
blew up
and
in
so
stocks
on and so
later
forth.
on.
The news kind of have been, on a weekly basis, to say the least. So I think the EU recently created an investment screening platform. The US has ciphers to screen foreign investments for potential security concerns. And Commissioner Breton, I mean, I was wondering, it's a question for both of you, but maybe Commissioner first to you. Do you believe we have the right mechanisms to ensure China does not build its industry through technology transfer? The senator briefly touched upon that, actually, but your European perspective will be important. And I would ask the senator to mute himself so that we could get on the screen Commissioner Breton.
Well, that's a very important question indeed. And first, regarding what Senator said about, and you mentioned about the so-called whistle effect, I just would like to say, and please take it for what it is. But we know here in Europe that by number, we are the biggest democracy of the free world. And we are 450 million inhabitants living with the same rules, rule of law, values. So as the first democracy, biggest democracy of this planet, I mean, it is our role, of course, to do what we have to do, and we are. That's why we are happy to do it, and happy also to let's say to if it helps others, Senator, we're happy. By the way, I hope that what we did also to organize our digital space will be done also in the US, and we will be happy to help here also if it's necessary. I'm discussing this a lot with Gina, as we know. But of course, we are very, because we are what we are, and because we are the market, a big market of we are 450 million eyes gold, multiplied by 2. That's a very important market. I mean, we know that as the biggest one, we have responsibility, and it's extremely important what you mentioned with China. China is, we call it this way of the Atlantic Ocean, a systemic rival. And it's very clear for us what we want to do and what we don't want to do. And of course, like the US, we have relations. By the way, we mentioned ASML, we mentioned Applied Materials, you mentioned Tokyo Electrons. With these 3 companies, I mean, we can build a plant, but without one of them, you cannot build it. So we know that in US, Europe, and Asia, let's say, we control, if we may say so, we control the capacity to produce manufacturing plants. And by the way, for these 3 companies, the China market is extremely important. And today, for some of them, it represents 25–30% of their revenues. And of course, this is why.
Can you pause here, Dave?
So the question is, what do you think?
So what he just said is there are 3 big semiconductor companies, Tokyo Electronics, ASML, and the other one. I'm not going to repeat it, but I forgot it. So they create the machines, and those machines create the chips. China doesn't have that. Those 3 companies control the market. So what he basically says is we can control the market together with the EU and the US. Now, China is a big market for those 3 companies. So if they have to listen to the government and are not allowed to sell certain types of equipment to China, they lose business. That's why they get subsidized in order to compensate that for the short term. Now, what's been happening in the last 10 months, at least with ASML in the Netherlands, they've decided to open new manufacturing plants in Spain, France, Italy, and one in Germany. And Intel is creating semiconductor plants through the US CHIPS Act that's been subsidized by the US government through the infrastructure bill that was part of it in the US. This is being built right now. It's not finished yet, but this is underway. This is happening right now. I just wanted to add that because I think his accent might not be easy to follow for everyone. So thanks for that, Dave. If you could press play again, it's almost finished, I think.
Is something that they can do or we can do, and what we don't want them to do. The three of them, let's say. Because of course, there's a lot of mature technology here, and it could not be an issue. But for some new technologies, up to where is the question we need to ask. Then we need, of course, to make sure that these applications will have to be kept because of the use of this very, very new technology that China could do. That we want to be careful and we don't want this to happen. So that's exactly how we are considering this. Of course, not only for European companies, but also for the companies of our friends. And I think it's important to discuss together very freely, very openly, and to have the right setup to do this, up to where we have no problem, and starting when we might have an issue.
Thank you, Commissioner. If you could, your team could mute you, that would be great, so we could move to Senator Warner's screen. Senator, same question to you. Do you believe we have the right to ensure that China does not build its industry through technology transfer? I visited a number of the companies that are based in Europe, and some of them told me that they believe it would take another 5 to 6 years when someone that has not been trained in one of the, so to say, original producers of machines or wafers and so on would take for a Chinese to be able to do it themselves. I guess it very much depends on which part of the supply chain we are focusing, but still, they were not necessarily optimistic it will be tomorrow that they could, be able to repair, a machine that is perhaps not working at the moment, and so on. To be very specific, but what is your thinking?
Well, first of all, I think it's important to restate as a policymaker in the United States, my concern is with the Communist Party and Xi Jinping. It is not with the Chinese people. But I think we have been on both sides of the Atlantic for many years, kind of asleep at the switch, as we've seen literally hundreds of billions of dollars of intellectual property stolen from European countries, stolen from American companies. We've seen the Chinese law in 2016 change and make extraordinarily clear in their legal structure that every Chinese company, its first loyalty is not to their shareholders, but is to the Communist Party.
Correct.
We've seen the Chinese state use technology to create a surveillance state, unprecedented in the world. So I think I go into this at least trying to be clear-eyed about the challenge that China presents. And I had a different view 15 years ago. I was more of a traditional view. The more China comes into the world market, the better it will be for all. I don't share that view anymore. I think history has shown otherwise, number one. Number two, I have been concerned in this semiconductor market itself by reports, and we're still trying to determine that, because as you said, Eva, the Chinese may not be able to produce the most cutting edge material or fix the equipment tomorrow, but we've been hearing reports that some of as a company gets put on a designated list, China will create a new semiconductor company, and those semiconductor companies are out buying as many of the tools from ASML or AML or Lam or others, and almost stockpiling them in anticipation that if at some point our European friends, American friends, our Asian friends would decide to cut off some of the sale of that tool equipment. That concerns me a great deal, that if French or Taiwanese or Korean or American companies are not getting the delivery of their tool sets because China is paying a premium. And I think we can only look at this on a collaborative basis. And last, I just want to make the point, I think, how we talk about this, and this goes beyond semiconductors. I think there is a large number of countries around the world, outside of Europe, outside of the United States, even outside of our traditional friends like Japan and South Korea and Taiwan. We almost need to figure out the right language, because I fear it sometimes when we discuss only the West. Our friends in Africa will say we're not part of that, or even when we sometimes say democracies, or certain countries around the world that both the Europeans and the Americans work with, may not classically fit that definition. Whether I'm old enough to remember when we used the term the free world, maybe that's the right term. I'm not sure, but I do think language, as we talk about how we build an alliance of countries that will work together on technology, semiconductors just being
An
one
alliance of
vertical.
countries that
I
work
think
together
we
on
need
technology.
Technology development, collaboration on new technology, on setting standards, on making sure that some of this technology does not get picked up by the authoritarian regimes
Setting
around the world,
standards.
really is one of the major issues of our time.
I can't agree more, but we are running out of time, so I'll pose the last question, because there's an area we did not touch upon, and that's raw materials, which are absolutely essential for the supply of chips. We know that Russia and China have increasing influence in the area, but Senator Warner, how do we counter that influence? And you mentioned Africa. So what roles do you see for us in Africa or mineral-rich countries such as Greenland? And then we'll move to Commissioner Breton to share how does he see this from a European perspective. And afterwards, I'll wrap up.
Okay, I will be very brief on this. I think, and let me move beyond semiconductors to things like greener power generation. I think, and I think the United
Industrial
States
revolution.
is the worst on this in terms of only measuring the effect of a Tesla once you turn it on in America, not looking at where the cobalt came from, not looking where the rare earth minerals have come from.
Correct.
I think COVID has woken us up to the critical need of these rare earth minerals and the supply chain. I think the United States, we are working on doing some permitting reform, because you can't say, well, we want these minerals only to be mined in third world countries. I think we have to think very carefully. It's not only about the mining process, but about where and how these minerals are processed. And I think this opens up a huge opportunity, again, to work particularly with our European friends, because I think they face many of these same challenges. We can't turn a blind eye to how these materials, even as cutting edge of semiconductors, or as electric batteries, or as solar panels, the inputs that go into those, we're going to have to share on the development and look at that supply chain as well. And there is a recognition, even from my friends in the environmental community, that if you are mining in a dirty mine in the DRC, cobalt, and it's all being processed for an electric battery in China using coal power to build the battery, you're really not grappling with the climate effects. The same argument can be made, obviously, around semiconductors as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner, over to you,
I have two
Senator.
counter
Please, if you
arguments.
can mute yourself. Thank you.
Well, that's also a very important subject, because we know that, especially in semiconductor, you mentioned it, Eva, there is a lot of raw materials that we need, and that, of course, we need also to have the control on the whole supply chain. And here, I would like to say that if we helped a little bit, you were kind enough, Senator, to say that we helped a little bit to speed up the decision for the US CHIP Act. You helped us here in Europe, and you helped me in my capacity of putting, working the single market emergency instrument, the Raw Material Act, And I said, look what our allies and best friends are doing with, let's say, the DBA or with the Reduction Inflation Act. That's a fantastic tool. Why don't we do the same? Use the reciprocity, and also because I think that this is what we need to put in place without naivety. Because you said it at the end of the day, we have been probably too naive. Especially over the past 20 years. And I was also one of them. I started also to build some plants when I was in my previous life near Guangzhou. And now, okay, we may regret it, but we play this game. So now we have been maybe too naive. So I think it's extremely important let's say, to be coordinated, but to do what has to be done. Because if we don't do this, of course, we will see again our dependencies that could be used as we see today for energy, for example, with Russia, as a weapon against us, against the democracy. So that's why it's extremely important to be very well coordinated, to have reciprocity from both sides of the ocean, to do roughly the same thing, and then of course to work together.
To do roughly the same thing. At the
Thank
opposite,
you very
at
much,
both sides of the
Commissioner.
ocean.
I
do
will
roughly
wrap
the
up
same
now.
thing.
If your team could put your link on mute so that I can do the wrapping up, that would be fantastic. I think it was a fascinating discussion and conversation. We aimed that it's short and concise. So I hope that for everyone that's listening, you got out your main takeaways. But I imagine, like many others, we are greatly encouraged to see this renaissance in transatlantic relationships. And I think we've witnessed that today within the discussion. I have a number of, easily the discussion could go for 2 hours or longer, but perhaps should there be interest and should there be more topics that we can discuss in a couple of months, maybe we'll reunite again, maybe in person, hopefully. But thank you very much to everyone for watching. And once again, thank you, Senator Werner, Commissioner Breton. We kind of joined from 3 different parts of the world, but I'm glad that the connection and connectivity actually in the end worked out. So thanks a lot.
Interesting.
Yeah.
You there? Okay.
Yeah, definitely I'm there. So I just thought I'd let you go first.
Yeah, well, I had two different thoughts of what they were saying as far as the cobalt and the lithium, other rare earth metals. Two different things on that. First, it would take over 6,000 times the current mining to equal the demand. However, with China at 40%, or Taiwan rather, at 40% of the semiconductor mining production,
Yes.
where is that going to come from within the U.S. And other places? And secondly,
way ahead of you. So that's the first question. Okay.
I would also like to add that those of us who are looking at solar, and I see that as another asset. So from crypto, I'm already planning another trade where I will take some more profit to ensure that my property is energy independent. So
sure.
I will have batteries, I will have solar, all of that.
Yeah. But I understand your question and connection
before the prices go nuts. So
yeah, but cobalt is
as an investor, when I hear this, that makes me want to go dig and dive into a couple of the companies that they were referring to, and then secondly, that makes me want to go dive into lithium and cobalt.
Yeah, okay. They've been very open in this conversation, which is why I wanted to share it, because prior to this, you said, well, Hey, Steak, you're from the Netherlands. You're from Europe. We don't get a lot of news here in the US in regards to Europe. And, I thought this would be a very good video because there is a lot of transparency and no bullshit here. There's actually just, they're laying it out as it is. And I think that's vital in this current media storm where you don't know what to believe. Well, of course, it could still be bullshit, but there was, in my opinion, a lot of transparency because he's a policymaker and not a politician. So I think that that's vital. And of course, he's relevant because after that, he created the Restriction Act. So yeah, there was a few things to take away. Let me go with your first question, and then I'll go with the second in regards to the companies, and then I'll give you my 2 cents on the video. So cobalt, I've looked that up because I didn't know it prior to this. Cobalt is actually used for its unique properties in the fact that it's a cooling agent. So these things, as they get heated, cobalt cools things down. So everything with electricity gets heated needs to be cooled down, and there is just nothing better than cobalt. But in order to have the entire world digitalized into some sort of fourth industrial revolution, digital infrastructure, smart cities, and smart appliances, and we're talking now not about the software that we usually talk about the digital transition and digital assets. We're talking about the hardware. We're talking about telecommunication towers. We're talking about semiconductors. We're talking about glass fiber internet. We're talking about cloud services. We're talking about storage. We're talking about all those elements that are just hardware. Quantum computing, the pinnacle of hardware. All that shit needs resources like copper, tin, bronze, cobalt, lithium, obviously with the batteries. That's a big one. But there is plenty of lithium in the world. Suffice to say, they found a fair bit of lithium fields. All the other things, not so much. And especially cobalt, because of its unique properties, that's the actual bottleneck. Now, you can mine cobalt in a few spaces in the world. So this is important for the geopolitical space. You can mine cobalt predominantly in the southern part of the continent of Africa. So not just South Africa, but Madagascar, Mozambique. Congo has like 70 to 80% of the entire cobalt market. And that's where EU, US, and Chinese interest aligns on that area, that continent of Africa, to say, well, we want it. That's basically it. What do you offer? And the US offers money, China offers infrastructure, and the EU offers civil social policies by saying we only buy your cobalt for a higher price if it isn't mined by children. So that you could perhaps give your kids a cut on an education and actually create a sustainable future. Now, different parts of Africa will want to do business with different parts of the world. Different warlords will want to do different business deals, whether that's US, EU, or China. So that's going to be an interesting clusterfuck, I think, of possible future wars. I think it's going to be right there because it's just too vital. And then, especially in the last year, we had this whole heated discussion in regards to BRICS versus NATO, and everyone wondering what the hell is the US and NATO doing in regards to digital finance, because that's why we're here, of course. Well, this whole Privacy Act that I tweeted to you, and maybe you can share the tweets later on that I put in your DM, that would happen today with the Privacy Shield, that's actually a step forward and the first step forward, and probably the only thing that was holding back that transatlantic trade deal, that was the privacy concerns of citizens' data, because the US protects its corporations in Silicon Valley, your Facebook, Meta, your Google, your Amazon. They're big players, and they're important in lobby groups. They're important in the US. They bring in a lot of shit. They have a lot of power over the world. They know a lot. They get their finger in everything in regards to data. Microsoft, big one as well, of course. But the EU doesn't really have that. And many of the software that was created in the EU was bought up by Silicon Valley. That's the main driver why the EU doesn't want to be left behind on this new revolution and is going aggressively at it because they don't want to lose their Nokia, they don't want to lose their Ericsson, they don't want to lose their Spotify, they don't want to lose their GPS systems that they created. All of that originated from Europe and eventually got bought up by a US company. So that's why they're going at it aggressively. But that's also why the EU as a governing body doesn't want to give power to corporations, but wants to keep the power of the data back to the citizens. And they mentioned the Brussels effect. The Brussels effect basically states, for those of you that don't know it, that Europe, the European Union, is such a large group of people together. If you put all the countries in the EEG, that's basically the trade bloc itself outside of the European Union as well, like Switzerland and Norway. If you put all of them together, even Japan is part of the trade deal, but if you put all of them together, you got like 750 million people. And if you want to do business on the European continent, you have to comply with European laws. Now, the Brussels effect states that if a company is going to have to comply with like warranty laws, instead of having 1 year warranty on a dishwasher, you're going to need 2 years warranty. So you got to offer a better quality of a product. So for companies in offering 2 years of warranty and creating a better quality product, it's actually more beneficial for them to make all their products better for 2 years warranty than create two different supply chains where one is shitty quality and one is good quality. And they call that the Brussels effect, that if Europe raises the standard of quality, then companies are going to comply with it globally. And she hinted at that, Eva, in regards to legislation and regulation, which is also the AI Act, the CHIPS Act, but also the MiCA regulation on cryptocurrencies. And we're seeing that play out now as well. We're going to have a few videos, I think, on that later on, Dave. Not on this one, but on where are those happy coincidences happening in the US in regards to lawsuits with the SEC and certain coins and tokens and certain outcomes, rules by decree, that actually perfectly co-align with what's written down in the MiCA regulation and also on the same timeline. Now, this privacy deal is a very big step forward, because if you want to be global compliant and if you want to have the same network and infrastructure and trade deals in place in NATO countries, yeah, you're going to need this. So I was about to land my plane, Dave, but you just stood up and gave me the finger. Where are you heading, Dave? Come back. Don't leave me here.
No worries, mate. Keep going, man. I'm listening. I just got to run to the restroom right now.
Yeah, I'm on a rant, so I'll take your airtime. That's cool. I'll land my plane a little bit longer. I'll take off again. So this is a very vital step forward, and I know many people aren't really looking deeply into this and what this means. And then if we look at the video and the transparency that Mark Warner gave and that Thierry Breton, even though he wasn't really, he had a very thick French accent. I apologize to my American friends for that. But basically what they stated is a confirmation that there is an alignment in doing the fourth industrial revolution in Europe and the USA as partners together, as a tandem. And they gave a fair shout out to a fair bit of companies. You know, they talked about Intel, they talked about Hewlett Packard, they talked about Ericsson, they talked about the ORAN Alliance. If you go to the website ORAN, which is basically G5, G6, G7 telecommunications networks, where the actual privacy of you as an individual will happen. You know, you'll actually log on to your phone or your XR glasses, and that's where your private data will happen, either cloud-based in the US or edge-based in European Union. And they gave those companies, they talked about NVIDIA, they talked about ASML, they talked about Tokyo Electronics, the semiconductor plants. And if you look into stocks and bonds, which maybe some of you will or will do later on, usually in this economy, because it blew up macroeconomically with the amount of money printing that happened, they have to do they have to get their liquidity from reverse repos and dealing with China. And what you see happening now is that when commodities go up, stocks tend to go down, and when commodities tend to go down, stocks tend to go up. So one of the plays, and I'm just giving it here openly, one of the plays that I'm looking into, it's not financial advice, but maybe it is, I could use some help, maybe you can advise me, is that if I take profits on a bull run in crypto, it might be interesting to look at these companies that create the actual hardware infrastructure of what I'm invested in, because I know that if crypto takes off with the proof of work UTXOs, with the regulation, and I think they will, your Bitcoin, your Litecoin, your Digibyte, your maybe even your Doge, your Ravencoin, your Bitcoin Cash, your Ethereum is debatable, but those four with the BlackRock exchange, and then there's maybe also the ISO 2022 compliance coins, like your Stellar and your Ripple and your H bar, and you mentioned Pillar and Dent in the past as well. But obviously also you got the whole IP infringement that they mentioned, IP rights, because China steals that a lot. So you got your Veritasium, you got maybe a few more there, like Theta, maybe also the SEC lawsuit coins, like Dragon Chain, Library. If you look into that, or LCX Exchange, the SEC versus Wahi, those court cases, if you look into that and you put that all in the same narrative, then I think that what we just watched in that video, that's why I'm so excited about it. And that's what I'm looking at. And I hardly have anyone looking with me, is that I think this is the grand narrative that ties it all together. It ties together the BRICS and NATO's answer. It ties together the whole digital revolution. It ties together the fact that the EU and the US want to come at it from the same perspective. Obviously, Brexit happened. England is not in the EU. Switzerland is not in the EU. Japan is not in the EU. So those are companies we want to watch out, or countries we want to watch out for as well. And they're being compliant. They're stepping in the same direction. Hell, even a country like Israel, 2 days after the MiCA regulation became mandatory and voted in, they decided to do the same thing. They decided to have the same operation rules. Say of you what you want of Israel, but they have a very powerful intelligence apparatus with the whole Pegasus thing. So they know what they're doing, and they're part of that whole digital infrastructure as well. And it's just interesting because Saudi Arabia and the Middle East basically said, well, we're going to sell our oil in a petro yuan, instead of a petrodollar. So it kind of depends on where we're going to divide the world. And if this is the answer to BRICS, I'm pretty excited, because we might not have all the resources, but from a rare metal point of view, but we definitely have the complete innovation. So why would they need their resources for themselves? They can't even construct it. It would at least take 5 to 6 years for China to get on to speed with semiconductors, and by then we're multiple generations ahead again. So it's just 5 to 6 years in tech innovation is a long time. So I would argue that many people usually get pessimistic about the future. I'm actually very optimistic. I think that this is a good step forward. But obviously, if you look at, the system being leveraged against citizens in the West, and our privacy concerns, and decentralized networks, we have a long way to go. It might not, go as quickly as we want to, but here is your actual use case. Like, here is your use case for a decentralized system if you want to go across borders, because then you need trust in the system, which you can only have if there is not one powerful player pulling all the strings, because we've had that with the Federal Reserve, and the world kind of didn't want it. The European Union and China want more sovereignty, so we're not going to go back to, I think, a full digi-dollar if you want to, but I think a decentralized system is a good way out. And our societies, if you have truly a free market like we don't have right now, they could actually really work well with a decentralized asset. So that just ties it into to everything. In my humble opinion, I've got a lot more shit to share on that, but I'll land my plane now, Dave, since you've been back for 5 minutes now. And I've said a ton of shit.
Yeah, I'm going through. I'm on Twitter at the moment, looking around, and actually, I should probably be sharing this.
What are you looking at?
Well, I was looking at the European Parliament I'm trying to get back in here.
Can you go to your DM with me on Twitter and show those tweets that I sent you of the, show them on the screen perhaps, of that privacy shield that I mentioned and that deal that happened today? You know, just so people know I'm not.
I don't think from this account. I don't think I can from this account.
Oh, fair enough.
I had a bit of a deal with Gmail, so I had a bit of a problem on my Gmail's accounts where we're messed up, and I'm going to be switching that over to Proton Mail. But
yeah, do you want me to send it again?
Sure. Yeah. So that way, then it will. Let's see.
I might disconnect a little bit from the stream when I do so and switch windows on my phone.
Well, this is
but
what
at least you'll be able to pull it up.
Yeah.
Do I send it to Blind Dave or do I send it to Hawkeye?
Send it to Blind Dave.
Okay. Well, give me a second.
That's the one I'm currently logged into. So
okay.
I mean, this YouTube channel is also linked to it through StreamYard. So that way it was easier for me to log in.
Fair enough. Yeah, I might be off for half a minute, but that's when I switch windows to Twitter.
Pulled up here these different ones that you sent me.
Yeah, that's September. That's the one of the video that we just saw right now.
September 7th.
Yeah, I posted it. I hardly got any likes. You know, who the fuck cares about me rambling on about this shit? But I thought it was interesting. You know, no one pays attention. No, it has like 30 views on that stream. You know, and for me, this is like a gold nugget of information. But yeah,
the guy behind the whole sovereign EU agenda.
Yeah, and then Mark Warner, which no one knew about, but I think he's going to be your next president in 10 years or something. He talks like one. Anyway, that might not be a popular opinion right now, but that's how it goes, right? There, he's right in there. Let me give you a second. I'll send it to you in DM. All right? Okay. I'll be back in a bit.
All right. So I may be mistaken here, but from what I gather, this sounds like the EU and the United States against BRICS nations over minerals, over metals, and to try to control or continue to control the market as far as semiconductors and whatnot. So this is very important for those of us within crypto. And however, we're not done here. This is going to tie in other things. So, yeah, stay tuned. It gets better. Oh, Lord. Let's see if he sent it over. Oh, no, wait. Is it? Wait. Darn it. Am I sharing my screen? No. All y'all see is me. Okay. Because I'm not sure where this is going to end up. Oh, yeah. I remember that. Wait, I hear you. I'm coming. All right.
So I just send you 4 links in your DM. And if you would be so kind, you can show them on the screen in this video. I think it would tie everything nicely together. But maybe you could also additionally put those links in the video description on YouTube, so people can actually see for themselves the video that we just saw. They can see it again. Maybe they can also read upon what I'm just going to send to you, because this is the additional information. It's very short, it's very brief, that explains a few things on what is that privacy shield. And then there's also a tweet of Brian Armstrong. Maybe we can end with that as a
Okay.
you know, as a nugget, because that also happened today. That flew under the radar. Funny how those things co-align. Happy coincidences.
Yeah, just so happens to, yeah, as a coincidence theorist, you know.
Yeah. Coincidence theorist. I love that. So this is the link of the privacy shield overview, and you can actually read it. It's very short, Dave. We could narrate it, or you could read it by yourself if you're on the screen. But it basically explains the history of the transatlantic trade deal that got blown up by the European Commission under the Obama administration in 2016, and that they actually picked it up. And the funny thing about the website that I DM'd to you in my tweet that I retweeted from someone else is that they basically just rebranded it from the same old shit. So it just shows you that those talks were just in the refrigerator, but nothing was ever deleted. You know, they were just biding their time, marinating the steak. So yeah, this is just a nice little tidbit. It's just half a page. Everyone can read it. Not too much, not too technical, but on what is this shit? What's the timeline? You know, everyone can come up to speed, like what's happening here, because this is going to be vital.
This is more what I was looking at. I was looking at January. So, you know, this, as far as a timeline.
Yeah, but it's nice, right, from the U.S. perspective, because sometimes you don't know what to believe. This is just the facts. No political sauce. This is just what's happening. And it's what we need, because we want to know, where is this market of regulation going to? Where do we invest in? But also, how does this obstruct decentralization? Like where's the fight? And we're going to come at that from in a different video, I think. Like, what can we do? Realistically, what can we do? Anyway, I think this is an interesting one. If you could, you know, send that under the video, that would be great. That's the privacy shield framework that happened today. Good news. And then there's the other tweet. We'll fill the videos with full of shit, Dave. We'll fill it full of shit.
I know. There's just too much information. There
yeah,
really
this is my rabbit hole for 2.5 years. I got so much shit on this.
And let's see.
This is just the tip of the iceberg, man. Just the fucking tip.
Let's see. And let's go to this one.
That's what this world is about, man. Sharing. Oh, yeah, I wanted to finish with that, but that's the happy coincidence theorist. Who doesn't know that ugly mug? But, you know, I got the same barber as he does, though, so shouldn't complain too hard. But anyway, he got a fuckload of lawyers in his SEC lawsuit, like 100 BlackRock lawyers that piled up with him, helped him. And all of a sudden, all his tweets are gone, and also from the Wayback Machine. Now, that last one is a hard one to pull. So I guess they pulled some strings. Yeah, it's almost as if, I don't know, maybe that whole Privacy Act that just came through, maybe his shit was on some servers and, you know, it wasn't compliant, so it had to go. I don't know. Funny how that happens on the same day. Yeah, it's funny. Funny how they know exactly what's happening too on that transatlantic trade deal. That either Brian is very, you know, connected, or maybe it's just BlackRock being very connected. Yeah, I think that's probably the case, right? It's probably BlackRock. They probably know. So they work on the same timeline. as that Privacy Shield Act. You know, all of a sudden the data is gone. It's not compliant anymore. Same day. Who knew? Small world.
Yeah.
Small world. And if you see this, you know, people even gloss over this news. But if you tie it into the other news, it ties in together so beautifully. It's like an orchestra.
Yeah, and for those of y'all still listening, yeah, I mean,
if you're not sleeping
just stay
yet.
tuned. Stay tuned. We have a lot more in store for you. Hard evidence, legal documents, you know, the nation
everything
state
linked,
websites,
everything
right,
saved,
right.
everything
Everything's
logged.
now saved, so we got it all.
Yeah, and the beauty of that, the reason why we want to do this is because we want to talk about what's factual, but we also kind of want to go into like the conjecture, and that people realize, okay, where is the conjecture and where is the fact? Like, I think that's vital in this space because we all want to do our own research and we don't want to go on bullshit. And when I don't know, I'll just say I don't know. But I think it's also fun to have conjecture about it, especially from different people, different angles, different minds. Sometimes other people bring in tidbits and I'm like, oh, fuck yeah, this is connected to this. Holy fucking shit. And my rabbit hole just got a little bit deeper. And you know, I love those moments. I live for that, man. My brain goes fucking nuts, and I like that. So you do me a favor, people, if you're listening and you got some news on this, you do me a favor. Feel free to share. If you post it under the YouTube video, I'll definitely find it. And otherwise, you can hook us up on Twitter. You know, our ads are on the bottom, so you can follow us. So feel free to DM or follow, you know, or share with other people that might do their own research and want to share rabbit holes. I'm all for it to see if we can tie it all together, because I think the whole controlling of the on and off ramps in crypto is completely connected to the same shit here, but it's just a different part that we might go into later. And then I shared a few other links with you as well, Dave, didn't I?
I've gotten a few things, but I've been really busy on the property. I haven't been.
No, I just sent you 4 links in DM.
I checked my phone earlier, and you were explaining a few things. I'm like, oh my god, It's like let's
Yeah, sorry, man.
Let's post some of this.
Oh yeah, but there's 2 more in your DM about the story that we just conveyed. One is the actual tweet with the Privacy Shield photo on it. There's like 4 on the Blind Dave Twitter DM.
Yeah, the last thing I got was at the Privacy Shield.
Yeah, that's true. And if you scroll upwards, might be
why the U.S. banking system is near collapse.
Nope. Yeah, and one above that. That's the banking
UK
system
City of London.
Sorry,
No, that was to Caitlin Long. Why Micah is coming to the U.S.
Yeah, that one. Click on that one. That's a good cliffhanger. That's like your that word originated from Sylvester Stallone in the U.S., right? Cliffhanger, love it. So here's the tweet. There you have it. Why the MiCA, the crypto regulation, is coming to the U.S., except also through law by decree through the SEC. There's a red wire in all SEC crypto court cases. We'll delve into that in a different video. But if you look into the tweet that I quoted from Max Schrems, and he's the privacy advocate in the EU that basically sues, and he sued the European Commission today on letting this go through, by the way. And his name, Schrems, his last name, is actually stuck to 3 privacy acts in the EU. They call it the Schrems 1, Schrems 2, and Schrems 3 Act. And if you click it open, Dave, I don't know if I can see it completely, but if you scroll down a little bit on his tweet, you click on the tweet of Max Schrems, the one that I quote. If you click on his tweet.
No, this is
No, the tweet of Max that I quoted under that. That one, yeah, if you click on it. Yeah, or scroll down a little bit. Yeah, there you have it. That's the picture with the red circle. Just a little bit, yeah, that one in the middle. That shows Privacy Shield list. That's the actual new website of the, and it's quoting the same the same text of the same website of 2016. You know, the stuff that's been put in the refrigerator. So this basically says like, yeah, we wait a little bit, but we never really, you know, we never really stopped. We always worked on it, you know, on the back end. We never really stopped between the EU and the US. Here's the same. Oops, forgot to, you know, an intern forgot to remove that a little bit. So those are those interesting nuggets that I think, yeah, you guys, you motherfuckers have just been spending every single time on this. Like, you've never stopped talking. Get the fuck out of here. Of course, you've always been talking. Like, as if you've not been talking for the past 3 years between the EU and the US on how to tackle this. Get the fuck out of here. So it's just, you know, I thought it's interesting to share that kind of shit. And that people also know when they hear us on this video, and it's great that you pull this up, Dave. I really appreciate it, because people can actually see it with their own eyes. We're not bullshitting here. This is actually things that are, you know, you can look it up yourself. Like, it's full on documented. Go into the rabbit hole with us. It's a fun journey. I don't have a conclusion, but I do have a lot of facts. Yeah, it's a fun rabbit hole. Join us.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's also one of the reasons. This whole rabbit hole is one of the reasons why I'm incredibly interested in Digibyte, because I think in some elements it's tied into it. And not to dismiss any other coin or any other project, but there's just, in my humble opinion, a lot of shit going on in the community with what's being built around Digibyte or on Digibyte, not necessarily by the Digibyte community, but by different entities that, in my humble opinion, I think are tied into what we just laid out. And we can do a video on that, you know.
Oh yeah, there's a lot more information.
Yeah, I've shared that whole.
We're trying to bring this in tidbits for people, but yes, this was important, and everyone should share this video.
Yeah, and we maybe we can link this video in the future and say, well, remember when we said that? Here you go. Here we. I just got to prepare a few things, and you know,
history is being written and laws are being created, and no one's listening.
Yeah, exactly.
You said before, people who are good with words aren't good with numbers, and people good with numbers aren't good with words. So we're just trying to bridge the gap.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's my own analysis with what I find a lot in these spaces, and those of us that are good at both, they tend to keep their mouth shut. And you know, I've got nothing to gain here. I'm just an average Joe, man. Really, I do supported employment for the government. I'm just being an executive in the law. You know, I'm just operating. I'm not a politician or anything. But it fascinates me because I think we should deserve a fairer world and a freer market. And I want to raise the standard of living for the people at the lower ends of society, because I think that if we raise the standard of living for the absolute poor, we raise the standard of living for the lower and the middle class as well, which will drive innovation, and the world is a better place. I sincerely believe that. Anyway, that's my philosophy on the whole thing. But yeah, I'm thanks for doing this, Dave. There's at least 1.5 hours already. So, and I think you have to edit a few things, but you know, that's life.
Well, I'm gonna go back, listen to it, and I may make a few edits. I'm not sure. I may just let it go.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty good.
It sounded pretty good. So, yeah, I'll try to copy those links and post them within this video in the description. If y'all want the links, they will be down below. I can just Control C to copy, Control V to paste is how a blind man did crypto anyway. So yeah, that should be relatively easy for me. And yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed, and I hope y'all tune in Every Thursday evening from here on is going to be a live stream. Comments are going to be open. Troll box is live. Just deal with it and ask your question. So, and that's what we're going to be here for. The entire panel, we're going to keep it. We're going to keep the panel as the live stream, and that's why I didn't want to do this live. So it was to have not necessarily a little more respect for the show, but yeah. And to every once in a while, when a tidbit comes out, we'll post a video here and there for you to dig in and enjoy the rabbit hole. So y'all follow the white rabbit. Anyway, I want to thank you, Steak, for sharing this with us. And
My pleasure. Thank you.
To many more in the future. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed. Get this out there. Y'all go make it a day. Later.